Habits of Happiness is sponsored and hosted by the Mindful Life program. The Mindful Life program helps people engage in life in healthy and meaningful ways, reducing stress while cultivating genuine happiness. They offer programs locally, internationally, and online. More information at www.mindfullifeprogram.org or 970-633-0163.
Habits of Happiness is also sponsored by Paradise Bakery, located in the heart of Aspen on the corner of Galena and Cooper. A favorite hangout since 1981. Famous for fresh-baked cookies and muffins, serving homemade Italian-style ice cream, lattes, and fine coffees. Open daily from 6:30 a.m. to 11 p.m.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on Habits of Happiness. I'm John Bruna.
And I'm Laura Bartels. And we're grateful to be here and looking forward to another episode of Habits of Happiness.
Yes. So, Laura, our last episode, you had the wonderful opportunity of grilling me on my own life. Thanks so much for that. And bringing up the obstacles that prevent us from really developing happiness in our life. And so this episode, I'd really like to kind of unpack how do we address that obstacle. So if you recall, the obstacle being a mind, a mind that's obsessive, compulsive, labeling, telling stories, and really a distracted mind that prevents us from really engaging in life in a way we'd like to. And so for this episode, I thought it'd be nice to kind of unpack the idea of what it is to live mindfully, to live with attention. And I know that you are a mindfulness teacher, and I thought it'd be nice to have a discussion around that topic of what it is to live mindfully, as opposed to just living in this sort of day-to-day way of showing up in the world without much attention or intention.
Yeah, well, I'll throw back at you the question of what does mindfulness have to do with happiness?
Wow, that was quick. All right.
I mean, here we are, Habits of Happiness, and we're going to talk about mindfulness, but I don't think we've connected those two yet. So what do you think? How would you describe the role? Why do we talk about mindfulness?
Well, as soon as the word mindfulness comes to mind, the two pieces that really evolve in the intersection of a mind that has attention, also has intention, it has purpose and meaning.
Mm-hmm.
So if I want to be happy, my happiness is really contingent upon how I'm living my life and what I'm paying attention to. So the degree to which I have a choice about what I'm paying attention to and not paying attention to.
Don't we have choice?
Do you have choice?
I mean, we're in the land of choice. I have a lot of choices, don't I?
Do you? So let's talk about that. We have lots of choices, right? You go to Whole Foods Market.
I have so many choices.
There's a lot of happiness in that story.
That's right.
Yeah, so I see the road you're going down. The idea that by having a lot of choices, that's going to cultivate more happiness. Does that hold up, you think?
That's a good question. It makes me think you've talked about when you were a monk and you would travel with monks around the U.S., the monks were coming from a refugee settlement with, very simple meals, probably not a lot of choice. They didn't have a market that looked like anything in the U.S. probably. And they came here and they noticed that we had all this choice, but there was something else that came with that.
Yeah, with choice comes really a lot of research now in even coming out of Harvard, the idea that the more choice we have, actually the less happiness we have, which is quite fascinating because we think the more choice we get, the more happiness we get. But what actually tends to happen is the more choices, our mind starts wondering, well, what about if I'd have chosen this instead of this?
Yeah.
So I actually find less satisfaction with the things I've chosen because my mind will tend to wonder about this. So if we went back to Whole Foods again, or it's any market, I'm not a commercial for Whole Foods, but we just had the idea of walking down an aisle and seeing 50 items of potato chips. Then your mind, well, what about this one? Or what about this one? And with those constant choices, our mind is also left with a little less satisfaction or wondering about another choice that might have been better.
It makes me think, too, that there's another piece to asking this question of do we have choice, and it's about choice of responding to the world. Do I have a choice of how I respond when somebody yells at me? Do I have a choice when something else happens in my life? I think that's an interesting piece too. You want to talk about that?
Well, the core, if we want to be happy, right? It's really about showing up in a way that you feel good about. Previous shows have talked about these definitions of happiness, and we're talking about a level of well-being, a level of inner peace, a level of contentment with how I'm showing up in the world, and that level of happiness really comes from responding to life in a way that you'll feel good about tomorrow, not in the moment, not reactive, not habitualized. And so much of our life is on reaction. It's on autopilot. It's, this happens, I get angry, I say that. This happens, I get nervous, I do that. And often I wind up saying things I regret and things I don't feel good about. And I may make up my mind, as you're talking about, going to the idea of choice. I might choose to show up with patience and kindness today, and yet I go out into my day and I wind up frazzled, impatient, worried, and stressful. Even though, in my mind, I had made up a choice that I was going to be patient today and thoughtful and kind.
And I know in your own life, you learned this lesson about it's not what happens to you, it's about how you respond to it. And then having the choice about how to respond to it in a way that you feel good about was a big piece of your, just sort of transforming your life. And it has been for me as well. So how does mindfulness relate to that transformation? Why did you end up to be a mindfulness teacher? How did you get to that place with that idea?
Good question. So you're bringing up, I think, one of the first keys of living mindfully. The idea that I would like to have some free will in my own life. That's my choice. It's a fascinating topic. People say that the reason we suffer is because we have free will. I often think about the reason we suffer so much is because I don't have free will, because I don't have the ability to choose one thought over another. I don't have the ability to respond to a situation the way they want. I've never met the person in my life that doesn't want to be a good person. I just haven't. And I work with people in penitentiaries and people who have done really harmful things and people who have done incredibly painful things. And in working with them, in their heart, if you go back to who they really want to be and go back child and so forth, they wanted to be a good person. But their environment, the conditioning, the things that have happened, the abuse that has happened, the violence that was part of their life, created conditions where it was really hard for them to show up in a way that they felt good about and was meaningful and good for them.
So is mindfulness then a way to develop free will?
Yeah. The one piece.
One piece.
Yeah. So mindfulness is a big topic.
Yeah.
You see all the research on mindfulness. We teach mindfulness, and there's lots of definitions of mindfulness. And nobody quite agrees on exactly what it means. But at one level, mindfulness, the actual training within its origins, is a certain pitch level of attention. The ability to have such a level of attention, to be aware of your thoughts, your activities, things that you're doing, without without this elaborative process. Some people say it's being in the present moment, non-judgmentally, and what they're talking about is to have such an ability to be attentive, aware in this moment, without telling a lot of stories about what's happening, without prejudging, without bias, without, like if I'm feeling bad or if I'm feeling a little anxious or nervous, that colors how I'm going to be in any environment.
So relating to what you were talking about last time about being delusional, we take something and then we tell a story and all of a sudden we're in delusion. We're 3 blocks away in delusion.
Right. Our mind's already telling a story and labeling it and making it something that hasn't even happened yet, may never happen.
Yeah.
I mean, when we think about worries, fears, stresses, anxieties, how much of that has not happened?
Right.
How much of that is only in my mind? And what we'll find is that mental afflictions, the source is in our mind, and it's the stories and how we attend to the situations in our event that have a prevalent impact on those stresses, worries, and concerns, which is very different from if I'm abused as a child. Well, that's a valid thing. It happened. But my mind and my stories about future events and things that have happened, and often even going back to old stories that aren't actually very accurate, which is different from ones that happened to me that are accurate, that are that do have an impact. So, for example, what we attend to, and this is the first key, is attention. What I pay attention to becomes my reality, right? That's what I attend to. So, do I have free will in my life means, do I have the ability to choose one thought over another? Do I have the ability to, if I decide not to worry about something, to not worry about it? Do I have the ability, if I want to show up with kindness and patience, to actually show up with kindness and patience? And so to develop free will, the ability to attend to what I choose to, rather than have my mind drag me around from one thought, one fear, one worry. You know, I'm planning now and I need to do this, or I'm, you know, thinking about what happened in the past. I don't even know where my car keys are.
So is it all about being in the present moment? This attention, this piece of just being in the present moment and being aware of what's reality right now? Or
well,
what do we do with that?
Let me just kind of finish the point of attention before I lose that point, right? So free will and attention means that if I'm going to live mindfully, I have to be able to develop a level of attention to understand that I can be here and tend to this conversation and be engaged in it in a way that I can see myself without a whole lot of projection and labeling and elaboration. But first I need to develop the attention. And that's something that in this very techie world that we live in, that is, you know, cell phones and things like that, is really challenging. But it's not just that. I mean, the busyness of a lifestyle that we had talked about takes our attention away from being in this moment so much of the time. So first is attention. And then your question now is does mindfulness mean literally just being in this present moment?
We hear about that a lot, don't we?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's an interesting discussion. To be here in this present moment. So one of my mindfulness teachers would say, mindfulness is a state of non-forgetfulness. A state of non-forgetfulness. And he would say that it means that it also relates to this present moment, attending to being here now, being here with some wisdom, and engaging in a conversation with attention and intention, meaning and purpose. But also, because of my attention, I can not forget what's happened in the past, and prospective memory, what I'm going to do in the future. So the idea is that if I'm planning a vacation, I can plan a vacation. I can tend to it mindfully with attention and make those arrangements. And that's prospective memory, that this is going to happen. Likewise, as I bring my attention to past events or what's going on now, I'm not going to forget the past events. I'm going to be present in this moment, and I'm going to be able to tend to future events. So in a sense, it's present, but in the present moment, being mindful, I'm able to decide to think about some past event, recall it if I need to. I'm able to place an appointment in the future and know if I made an appointment on Tuesday, well, I have an appointment on Tuesday because I was there when I made the appointment. My attention was there, my presence was there, I have some attention around it. But on a deeper level, and relating directly to happiness, I think it's a state of non-forgetfulness of what's really important to you, what's a meaningful life to you, what is it that really provides your lasting happiness in life, and what are your values. And so that leads into this second key, which is values. If we want happiness in our life, if we really want happiness in our life, if we want well-being, inner peace, tranquility, a sense of fulfillment, well, that's going to come from living a life that's meaningful. That is in alignment with your values. That's something that is at our very core. When I do things I feel good about, guess what happens? I feel good. When I do things I don't feel good about, I feel guilt. I feel less esteem. I feel, not so good. And so when I think about mindfulness in terms of non-forgetfulness, how about not forgetting what's really important? Not forgetting that this day will never come again. Not forgetting that every moment we have is precious. Not forgetting that this person I'm attending to right now is a very precious person in my life, and giving them my attention. So this state of non-forgetfulness has a lot richer connotation than a present moment, but being present in a moment, in a way of not forgetting, hey, what's important, what's meaningful, and how do I want to live my life, bringing that awareness to what's happening, and that might enable me to respond to whatever's happening in life in a more meaningful way.
We talk also about attention and intention. So the intention would be around your values. The attention is a skill that we develop. I often talk about how we can have an intention, but if we don't have good attention on that, it's never going anywhere. And, if we have good attention skills, but we don't have an intention, a clear intention, or we don't really know our values, what are we attending to? And what's the point of attending if we're not infusing it with a good direction? So it's interesting, I think about, one could be going off this way, and we got this one down, but this one's over here, or we got this one down and this one's over here. But when we put those two together, they really work well together.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we, as soon as you said you can have attention or intention without attention, the cause of mine is the road to ruin is paved with good intentions, right?
Right.
Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to get my life together. Yeah, I'm going to be better. And like I said, I've never met the person that doesn't want to be a good person, really, in their heart. So lots of intentions, but without action, it doesn't get us very far. And really the catalyst for that action is putting some attention into your life and how we're living it. Conversely, you're saying that, there's people that have really good attention. So I've met great meditators that can spend a great deal of time with single-pointed concentration. But that always, that in itself does not produce necessarily the meaningful life. Most of the time, those who are meditating are well-trained, and they're infusing it with an intention that they're meditating for a purpose, and they're cultivating attention. That's generally, and it's generally beneficial. But there's also, I can learn to concentrate and learn really good concentration skills to do very harmful things. Right.
That's true.
Right? And so we can train our attention to be a really good thief. We can train our attention to be a good con man. We can train that mind in a way that's going to do some things that ultimately won't be very beneficial for myself or others, or be very short-sighted. Likewise, again, meditation, there's a recent article I read where this person reflected on, he felt so good meditating, that when he was going through a divorce, a difficult time, he went to his meditation practice. It really gave him some peace. But he went on for years in meditating. What he found was he was actually running from dealing with his divorce. So years later, he had not healed from the divorce. And even though he's a great meditator and could find peace in that, it did not translate into being healed and well and interacting and growing from that relationship and divorce. And so again, with your attention, without sort of bringing a level of what the third key would be here, wisdom. Right? wisdom. So it's one thing to have, so attention, our first key, values. Now that I'm paying attention, well, let's pay attention to what's meaningful. How do I want to live my life? What's valuable and what's purposeful? Bring some awareness to that. And as I do that, well, now let's cultivate this level of attention, the way I want to live my life, with some wisdom, with some wisdom, to really learn from all of the events in our life, to learn to see the world in a way that's more accurate.
Without delusion, as we talked about before, right? Without the
delusion.
stories.
Yeah. So what's an example of a story or a delusion that prevents us from being happy?
Oh, gosh. We tell a lot of stories. I might tell myself a story that I'm in a new job, and I'm the low person on the totem pole, and I'll never be good enough. And we can go on with that story for a long time, and it can get deeper and more elaborate, and we can build on it until it really creates a belief system that we have a hard time sort of peeling away from. I mean, that would be an example of something I'm sure many of us have experienced, where we tell ourselves we're not good enough. If we look at reality, we might find the indications are there's no reason I'm not good enough. I'm just as good as this next person. Or if I'm not, that doesn't mean I can't change, and I can get to that. But we sometimes believe we can't change. We tell ourselves that story, tell ourselves the story we're not good enough. I mean, those are some, I think, really common examples.
Yeah, you're reminding me of sort of the story about the elephant.
That's a great one.
The idea that all throughout Southeast Asia, you see an elephant who's chained up to a little stake in the ground, right? And the idea, here's this big elephant, here's this little stake in the ground. He could pull that out and walk away, and why doesn't he? And so the big lesson around that is he was chained up when he was a baby elephant. And when he was a baby elephant, he could pull and tug, and it hurt, and it cut his leg. And he learned at that time that he couldn't pull it out. He wasn't strong enough. He didn't have those choices. And so now he's a big elephant, and he was trained when he was younger to have this belief system that doesn't really fit the current situation. And so with psychology, we kind of look at developmental psychology. A lot of the views and thoughts about ourselves, we learned when we were very young. And when we were very young, when I'm 7 years old, I may think I'm funny or not funny, or can dance well or not dance well. And I develop an idea about myself and a personality that often will stick through the rest of our life that are no longer true, even though we've got new skills and new opportunities, and we can carry that around without checking them. So I like to, when I was a high school teacher, I used to tell my kids, tug on that chain, test this out, try something new, test something, I mean, I used to think I was a bad dancer. True. It's hard to imagine, isn't it?
Well, and you had a speech impediment. You probably never thought you would be sitting right here,
Yeah, absolutely. I used to
talking in front of a camera.
Yeah, I wasn't able to speak in a way that anyone but my mom could understand me.
Right.
And here we are speaking today. And my joke around being a bad dancer, I've recently discovered I'm not a bad dancer. I'm an enthusiastic dancer.
Enthusiastic.
Yeah, it's a whole different
thing.
That
is different. That is different.
So,
yeah. Well, I know we just have a few more minutes. We've talked about attention. We've talked about values and how important they are, intention around values. And we've talked about wisdom, which is a big, big topic. There's another one.
Yeah, so the fourth key here is really learning how to have healthy relationships with others and yourself in the world. So we call it an open heart. And so if I want to live mindfully, I want to have attention. I want to really be aware of my values and how I want to be in the world, so I can respond in that way, to see the world more clearly as I engage in it, but really to enrich all of these with an open heart. And those open-hearted practices are sort of best categorized in what we call 4 immeasurable trainings of equanimity, of compassion, of loving kindness, and of empathetic joy. So these are skills that are direct antidotes to really afflicted states of mind that we can carry with us. Equanimity is the opposite of attachment and aversion. loving kindness, the opposite of this, not cruelty, but of sort of anger, and compassion, the opposite of cruelty. And then empathetic joy being the opposite of jealousy and envy. Yeah. So if
And these are universal. I mean,
and-
these are things that help us just to be better people.
yeah, these are universal human ways of being.
Yeah.
So, so the collective effort of just a mindfulness practice of being present in the moment, well, if we want to live mindfully, we need to take that level of attention in with these 4 elements of living without forgetting your values, to live with wisdom, and to open your heart up in ways that are meaningful for you. So I believe we have about a minute left, or how are we wrapping up?
We might just have about that long.
Okay, well, in that case, without me going on much further, every episode we want to offer a habit of happiness. And so let's, I'll invite you to choose the habit that we'd like to encourage people to try. All these habits, we encourage people to just have a moment to reflect and see if they can try this out for a week, right?
Yeah, and I think a good one for this episode, as we've talked about these 4 keys, and the first being attention, is a simple practice around attention, where we suggest that each day you just notice some things during the day. Maybe notice 5 things throughout your day that typically would go unnoticed or unappreciated, and just take some time to experience them and reflect on them. And just shifting, as we talk about sort of shifting the marble out of the groove, looking at things you don't notice normally, really helps you to start to enhance that skill of attention. You're choosing to notice things that you wouldn't normally do. So we invite you to try that this week. Give that a try and reflect on it. So we want to thank you so much for joining us today on Habits of Happiness. We look forward to seeing you again on our next episode, and we wish you a wonderful week.
Yeah, may be well and be happy. Enjoy.
Habits of Happiness is sponsored and hosted by the Mindful Life program. The Mindful Life program helps people engage in life in healthy and meaningful ways, reducing stress while cultivating genuine happiness. They offer programs locally, internationally, and online. More information at www.mindfullifeprogram.org or 970-633-0163.
Habits of Happiness is also sponsored by Paradise Bakery, located in the heart of Aspen on the corner of Galena and Cooper. A favorite hangout since 1981. Famous for fresh-baked cookies and muffins, serving homemade Italian-style ice cream, lattes, and fine coffees. Open daily from 6:30 a.m. to 11 p.m.